Chiefs Live brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers, the heart of free agency, live here from One Arrowhead Drive, and the return of voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus. Basketball circuit over, basketball season over, and he's right back in Studio 4. Get this, a full hour of free agency talk right here on KCChiefs.com. Welcome back, Mitch Holthus. You start this second wave of free agency in Kansas City.
Great, and I just want to apologize to everybody that, you know, the symbol, the icon, Young Brad Young, it's hard to slip in for him. It's like being the backup quarterback, but we'll make this happen.
Well, if you check KCChiefs.com, Brad Young taking the spotlight last week. I went on a vacation of sorts where it wasn't really a vacation with our signings. I was on the computer all day, but I wasn't physically here in town, so our one-on-one interviews, the exclusives, go to Mr. Brad Young. Peyton Hillis, Kevin Boss, we'll see those later on in this show, did a fantastic job filling in. And he's back to his roots today, producing this show, something he hasn't done in probably 2 to 3 years, as Adam Pellegrino's taking his vacation. One by one, our 65 TPT guys get to take some time off. So Brad Young is the jack of all trades as we head in the second round of free agency.
It's the NFL, man, the more you can do.
The more you can do, position versatility. One guy who doesn't have, he could have position versatility, but I don't think he's going to have it in Kansas City. He is the starting right tackle heading into 2012. Eric Winston, obviously the anchor of Kansas City's free agent class thus far. Mitch, your thoughts on the addition of Eric?
Josh, really excited about having him with a kind of a Pro Bowl caliber guy, potential Pro Bowler on that right side. And now all of a sudden, the pieces kind of weave together with the offensive line. But honestly, the best tackle in all of free agency this year, and maybe one of the top 10 free agents overall, maybe one of the top 8. But in studying him, watching him, we played him a couple years ago in Houston. The guy can maul. I think he's going to be a great addition to this team. Whether the Chiefs zone block into the outside. Some say that he has to work on his pass blocking, but it looks pretty good to me. This is one that scratches the itch big time.
Yeah, it's a godsend, really, that he was released by the Texans, one of the best right tackles in the game. It fits exactly with the Chiefs' need, and he was the fit for Kansas City from the start. Chiefs fans were very prominent in the recruiting through Twitter of Eric Winston, and just a natural fit for Kansas City. We talked about it leading up in our free agency previews, Mitch. The offensive tackle market was extremely thin. Jared Gaither, who didn't make it in Kansas City a year ago, was thought of by many as the best tackle available in free agency this year. And when you compare Gaither to Winston, to me there isn't much comparison there. And it looked like the Chiefs, to get a true starting anchor on that right side, they were going to have to do it through the draft. But when Winston gets released, he's a cap casualty in Houston. He comes here. The Chiefs were able to snag the big fish in free agency, and now kind of reroutes what you can do through free agency the rest of the way, through the draft, because the Chiefs, before signing Winston, Barry Richardson was an unrestricted free agent. You had 2 tackles under contract and only one capable of starting. That's Brandon Albert on the left side. Your only other tackle under contract is a developmental guy in David Mims, and the Chiefs like David Mims, but he hasn't played a single NFL snap yet, and he's played on the left side throughout his time in Kansas City. So the Chiefs had a huge need. I'd even say gaping hole on the right side they had to get filled, and Winston becoming available is really a godsend for this team.
Well, and he brings a little edge to him, too. I mean, this guy's a Friday Night Lights guy. He's Midland Lee. So he comes from West Texas. Odessa Permian's
the big rival.
The big rival.
Permian, that's right.
And he had a great career at Miami of Florida, and look what Arian Foster's been able to do in the run game and that zone run game that Houston's been able to use. And Schaub, they've had a great offense when healthy. And so this is just exciting to bring him in here, and the fact that this isn't the 03 offensive line, one of the top 5 greatest in the National Football League, but you start to piece it together. And how exciting is it that John Asamoah on the right side now can grow with Eric Winston and develop what could be one of the better offensive right sides in the next 3 to 5 years.
Definitely, and Eric Winston's arrival in Kansas City, we mentioned it was limited in bodies for the Chiefs, but the Chiefs weren't his first option. Really, the natural fit for Eric Winston was in Miami. You mentioned he played college football in Miami, and his brother is in the scouting department in Miami, and Miami has a need at right tackle as well. Dollars and cents aside, he made his first visit to Miami accordingly, and then came to Kansas City, didn't know much about the town. We'll hear him, his conference call yesterday. He said he thought it was a Rust Belt city before he came here. Didn't know much about the team or the roster, but he was taken aback by the fans and how much fans recruited him on Twitter. And, of course, more importantly, GM Scott Pioli, head coach Romeo Crennel, offensive coordinator Brian Dable, and offensive line coach Jack Bicknell Jr. put on what he called a full court press for his services and went above and beyond what any other team did. He felt wanted. And then he learned about Kansas City when things are going on here, and it took him 2 days, but he stayed in town and he did not leave without a contract.
Let's be honest, Josh, this free agent market is turned into college recruiting. And so it's almost like, it is like college recruiting, is that when you get a guy on campus, you don't let him get away until he commits. And that's the way your great colleges recruit, and that's what the NFL's turned into. Yeah, the money's a factor, it's a big factor, but the Chiefs did a great job in recruiting him and didn't let him get away. Basically, once he got on campus, he was going to be made a Chief, and so the front office deserves a lot of credit, and the coaching staff in recruiting this guy. The guy's a high character, high energy, power guy. He's going to fit right in with this roster.
And he allegedly failed a physical with the Houston Texans, had his ankle scoped this offseason, and he says he's completely healthy. He passed his physical here in Kansas City. He did in Miami as well. He said there should be no problem. You know, they may ease him into OTAs, but this guy should be full go for the offseason program and into training camp. We talked to Eric Winston yesterday on the phone as part of our Chiefs Live Overdrive to get his thoughts on signing in Kansas City and what it all means. Let's take a look. Welcome to Chiefs Live Overdrive, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. On the phone with us is the man who many consider the anchor of Kansas City's free agency class in 2012. Right tackle Eric Winston is on the phone. And Eric, I'm going to cut right to the chase. When you came into Kansas City, you had lunch at Jack Stack Barbecue. Was that your selling point in picking Kansas City?
The burn ends were a part of it, I guess. But you know, that was a whole other experience into itself. Yeah. The Kansas City barbecue scene, I got to say, is something else. I didn't realize how big of a part of the culture it is there, and I'm excited about taste testing every single barbecue joint around the city.
Well, you set off a great Twitter debate amongst Chiefs fans, because that is a big debate in Kansas City. You'll come to know. But about the recruiting process, fans really took to Twitter, tagging you at Eric Winston about coming to Kansas City. How much of an impact did Chiefs fans have on you ultimately choosing the Chiefs?
Well, you know what? It's always nice to be wanted, and I really felt like the Kansas City Chiefs organization and the fans made a good impression upon me on that. I think they did more so than any other team. They really made me feel wanted and wanted to be there. So wanted me to be there, I should say. So they were great on Twitter. They were any way they could get a hold of me. I felt like they were trying to get a hold of me. We actually ran into a couple of people like, hey, you know, you come in here with this and the bellhop at the hotel, to the radiologist. You know, everybody I had to run into was excited about me being there, and it's definitely a good feeling.
That was a full court press by the fans, but as you said in your conference call, it was a full court press to get you from GM Scott Pioli, head coach Romeo Crennel, offensive line coach Jack Bicknell. Where do you see yourself fitting into on the field, and what sold you about the Chiefs as a football organization?
Well, you know, hopefully at right tackle. I mean, I think that's what they brought me in for, and that's where they want me to play. Obviously, you know, where Coach Crennel says to go, I'll go. You know, I've never been one of those players that I have to play this position or that's it. So, but I mean, as far as I've been told, and as far as I think they're concerned, they want me at right tackle and to keep doing my thing. I think I've proven so far throughout my time in the league that I can be an effective tackle and play at a high level, and that's what I plan to continue to do coming into Kansas City.
What was some of the plan, the overall big picture plans that Coach Crennel and Scott Pioli talked to you that made you think, you know, this is a great place I'm going to come and really build some things for not just 2012 but for years to come in KC?
Sure. You know, you look at the way the roster is made up, you look at the additions they're making. This is something that they're building for the long term, and you can definitely tell that there's a plan in place, that they're excited about what they got coming in and what they already have here. And I think you look at the roster now with the additions of Boss and, you know, obviously Brady Quinn as a backup to Matt Castle, who's already proven that he can win a lot of games in this league, to everything. You know, Jamal Charles, Peyton Hillis, obviously. You know, the list goes on and on about the weapons they have here, and then the existing guys and all like that. You know, I'm part of the class that they're bringing in, and that doesn't even count the draft class that they got coming up this year. So there's a lot of excitement, but there's a lot of excitement for a good reason. You know, you can't manufacture some of this stuff. So it's an excitement for a good reason. I'm excited about it because I think I can, after being in the league this long, I know what a good roster looks like, and I know what kind of a good team looks like, and you can definitely tell that this team has it.
Eric, fans hear about free agency visits, and obviously people know how the process goes and in the college game and recruiting, but will you just kind of give us an overall view of what are free agent visits like? What do they consist of at the NFL level when you visit the Dolphins, when you visit Kansas City? What goes on in those visits?
Well, they're still a lot different than the college and the pro visits. I think that the situation I think the guys are in are different. I think the teams are in different situations. So it's, in college, it's the red carpet and this and that. It has very little to do with business. I think the NFL unfortunately has a lot to do with business. But at the same time, like I said, the other pieces have to come together, and they did in Kansas City as well as this business side. So, it's different. It's tough on both sides. I think it's much tougher on both sides. In the pros, much more so than in college. I think it's just tough on the coaches, and the kids obviously have a tough decision, but at the same time, it's not as tough to know what exactly the next move is. And it's stressful. It's not it's an easy time. It's the lack of security and the lack of not knowing where you're going to end up is obviously, for me, it was very stressful having a family, but at the same time, we're going to be all right, and Kansas City just seemed like such a natural fit for me and my family.
Eric, I'll close with the question that I got most from Chiefs fans, and that was, what took so long? You were here for about 2 days. Fans were getting worried if you were heading to Baltimore. Were you heading to St. Louis? Why wasn't it an extended visit and with the timing?
It was just a process, and sometimes things last longer, and I think everybody was just doing their due diligence, and sometimes things move fast, and unfortunately in my case it didn't. It moved slow, but I think I've got to say that the organization, Scott Pioli and the rest of the guys there did a great job of keeping transparency important. They were an open book. I think we were an open book. And at the end of the day, I think that really helped how this whole thing came together. And as long as, I believe, and I think Mr. Pioli believes the same thing, that, if you're up forth and you're honest and you're an open book, it's much easier to do business that way. And I think that's the reason a lot of this got done.
Well, Eric, I can assure you, you'll receive a warm reception in Kansas City, so let me be not the first, but one of the many to welcome you to the Chiefs.
All right, I appreciate it.
All right, take care, Eric.
All right, bye-bye.
Going forward here at the offensive line, you have Eric Winston on the right side. Mitch, left to right, Brandon Albert, Ryan Lilja, Rodney Hudson, John Asamoah, Eric Winston. Right now, that would be your starting five. Behind them, you're not exactly sure. We mentioned David Mims earlier. He would probably be your backup / swing tackle maybe on both sides. And what do you know? He hasn't played in an NFL game, and really he's just been a practice squad member throughout his career. The guys behind the interior of the line, Mitch, you have Rob Bruggeman, practice squad guy. Darrell Harris been on the practice squad for several years. Lucas Patterson, another practice squad guy. What I'm getting at is now that the Chiefs have reeled in the big fish at right tackle, it doesn't mean they're not done on the offensive line. There's a definite need there behind those five, maybe even someone to push one of the members of that starting five, but behind that five for an experienced veteran who can swing and play multiple positions.
Yeah, I think that's where the Chiefs go now. This is like the third week of Christmas shopping. Black Friday's over, all that frenzy of free agent spending, but now you get into the value where you look at guys where you can sign in free agency. And I think there's probably two more there, either drafted or free agency, where you get the swing tackle. You got to have them. Let's be honest, Brandon Albert, who has missed some time almost every year he's been here with one injury. So remember the 2010 year where he missed the Seattle game and Richardson had to play left tackle. That's just one example. But also then a center guard guy, kind of what Hudson was last year for the Chiefs, where he could fill in at both guard and center. So you almost need a swing tackle. You do need a swing tackle, and then you need somebody inside that can play all three of those positions ostensibly.
Typically, the Chiefs have carried 8 offensive linemen on their roster.
I have a question for you.
Active have been 7.
Did you ask Eric what number he's going to wear?
I haven't asked him. 73 was his number, and
Asamoah's
that's Big John Asamoah.
Yeah.
There's a number of issues right now. A lot of the guys don't have numbers because Well, Brady Quinn, 10, and that's Terrence Copper. You have Winston at 73, and that's John Asamoah. So Chiefs fans looking for the numbers. Don't worry if you want one of your newest free agent signings. The Nike release doesn't come out till early April, so you got time before the Nike jerseys come in anyway. But no numbers assigned just yet.
Colleges let you use duplicate numbers.
Right.
Let's go the NFL. Duplicate numbers go 73, right guard, right tackle. That'd screw the Broncos up. They don't know who's who. It's a shell game. So move them inside and out. Just threw that out there.
But so when you look at that 5, there's a definite need to find someone who can swing both inside and outside. I think, does it happen through the draft? Does it happen through free agency? I think both, Mitch. There's probably room for 1 and 1 or maybe 2 and 1, depending on what way you go. You can find some mid-round offensive linemen. You could even take an offensive lineman in the first round. But I think they need to bring in a veteran still of some caliber, because when you look at the roster, typically 8 men on the 53-man roster, 7 are typically active on game day. Last year, if you think of the backups, the primary backups that were active, you had your starting 5. Rodney Hudson was essentially your backup to both guards and center. And for the majority of the season, Jared Gaither was your backup to both right tackle and left tackle. So you take that blueprint what the Chiefs have got. You need someone who can play both tackles and someone that can really back up all 3 interior positions.
And Josh, one of the things, and I'll harp on it until the season begins in 2012, is this team needs to be better in the red zone. They need to be better short yardage. They need to be better in goal-to-go situations. That third tackle many times becomes key, because you'll go tackle over tackle and go unbalanced, particularly at the goal line. Now, you've got Maneri, who can do that, switching to tight end, but he's skilled, but he can maybe fill that position. But that swing tackle becomes important for a variety of reasons, backing up both left and right. But they get on the field more than people realize. Placement protection, on field goal protection or point after touchdown, and then also short yardage position when you go tackle over tackle.
You mentioned tight end and Steve Maneri. That will lead us into Kevin Boss and the free agent signing there. I think the Chiefs are probably pretty close to being done at that position. You may see a guy drafted, but now you have 4 players at the tight end position. Tony Moeaki, obviously your number 1 option, coming off knee injury and knee surgery this offseason, should be on pace to have a full return by camp. He'll probably take it easy during OTAs. Kevin Boss, new free agent addition, has starting experience, been a regular starter. He can do a number of things for you, and I think he'll play probably just as many snaps as Moeaki, depending on Moeaki's health. Then your other 2 guys, Jake O'Connell, who's been here since 2009, hasn't made too much of an on-field impact just yet in his career. And then Steve Maneri, who moves over from offensive tackle to tight end to possibly be that kind of swing tackle, because most of his reps last season, Mitch, came as a tackle-eligible player. So if you read between the lines, and you look at the guys who departed, Anthony Becht, he's a blocker. Leonard Pope has been really the primary backup / if Moeaki's hurt, he goes in. He's your 2 tight end set. I'd say Boss is probably an upgrade over Leonard Pope. Well, and Anthony Becht's gone, so Steve Maneri heading there. Maybe he's your number 3 blocking tight end / extra tackle. I think there's going to be some good competition for that 3rd tight end spot between O'Connell and Maneri, but this is a group I felt really improved, and it was, let's be honest, the most inconsistent position last season once Moeaki was injured.
Well, I'm going to go even further. I think it was the weakest position on the team last year. It was the most penalized position. If you looked overall, you throw in some special teams penalties at that spot. But Kevin Boss, and I loved him with New York. Man, he had the year with the Oakland Raiders, and we saw the fake field goal touchdown that he had, which maybe is his most exciting play right here. So, hey, we get Suckup to throw him, or Colquitt's got a new target. But I think he's another guy that scratches an itch and fills a void, because he gives you some skill that complements Tony Moeaki. So let's just take a look at strategy. You go 2 tight ends. Those are your 2. Line them up on the same side. Now you declare, the defense have to declare a couple safeties. You've got a Moeaki who can stretch the field, go down the rail, much like a wide receiver, like his play against San Francisco in 2010. But you still have a guy in Boss who can block, be an extra blocker, but then he's also got the capability of being an intermediate pass catcher in there. So it allows Brian Daboll to have all kinds of options with a 2 or 3 tight end set, depending on short yardage. But when you go 2 tights, get 2 safeties on the field, go into base personnel with the defensive secondary, and you can still stretch the defense and hit for big plays, and you can still protect Matt Castle at quarterback because Kevin Boss can do both.
Yeah, you mentioned the penalties at the position, and it doesn't look like Leonard Pope will be returning at this point if you look at the signings. And, I know a lot of fans like Leonard Pope, and personally, I was a big fan of Leonard Pope as well as a person, as a locker room guy. You're not going to meet a better team guy in that locker room. But when Moeaki went out and he played more, he did struggle as far as the penalties go. He led the team last year in penalty yardage with 9 flags for 79 yards. Usually, that stat's reserved for your offensive tackles. They're protecting a quarterback by holding, or maybe a corner with all the new rules, and you can't touch a guy after 5 yards, and you breathe on a quarterback or a wide receiver, you're going to get flagged. It's kind of shocking to see a tight end lead your team in penalty yardage, 9 flags for 79 yards out of Leonard Pope last year. And really the guys that follow him are just who you expect. Brandon Albert, 10 flags for 75 yards. Barry Richardson, 9 flags for 50 yards. That makes sense. They're tackles. Then you had, as far as yardage goes, Brandon Flowers, 5 flags for 45 yards. But here's the other tight end. This is a shocking one as well, Mitch. Jake O'Connell, who played limited last year, 7 flags for 40 yards. So you add that to Leonard Pope's total, and the tight ends may have been the most flagged position group, at least bang for their buck as far as snaps played last year. And that in addition to only catching 34 passes as a combined group, and Moeaki had over 44 catches for 590-something yards as a rookie. The production there really fell off after that injury.
Yeah. It wasn't even where you weren't getting big pluses, you got minuses from the position. It wasn't even like in a neutral spot. And some of those for Jake were special teams penalties. But still, by the addition of moving Maneri there, I'm kind of excited to see what he can do. I mean, we saw him the tackle-eligible pass last year, threw to him once. You've got a nice tight end, and then O'Connell can be a fill-in guy. He can help you in special teams. You're not putting him out there where you're expecting him to make big plays, where you got other guys that can do that. So I thought the Kevin Boss signing was really good. And again, I think you're just going to be better whether you go 3 tight ends short yardage or to declare to the defense and try to create some mismatches formation-wise. It just gives the Chiefs offensively a ton more options than they had a year ago.
And just like Eric Winston, Kevin Boss comes to the Chiefs via cap casualty. The Raiders having to trim a lot from their salary cap. Same with Stanford Routt signing earlier this offseason, which we've covered that plenty. But cap casualty, that's the name of the game in free agency, I think, especially for the Chiefs. Even go back to what the Chiefs have done. Ryan Lilja, cap casualty in his release. Thomas Jones, when he signed, cap casualty released, comes here. The majority of the guys that make the biggest on-field impact each year aren't the guys off expiring contracts because teams try to keep those guys for the most part. It's the players who teams have to make a decision because of financial reasons and cutting guys. And both Boss and Winston and when we add in Routt all came through cap casualty.
It is why you have to manage the cap. And every day you hear fans kind of moan of saying, well, the Chiefs are so many million under the cap. And I know the new rules are in place, you're going to have to spend so much, but you still have to manage the cap, meaning you can't go crazy in the way you set up a contract. And you have to have a player that's going to be valuable to you if you're going to pay them that kind of money, or you get into that same kind of a problem. Again, it would be like in 2 years you have to cut a Brandon Flowers or a Derek Johnson or somebody you don't want to cut because the cap dictates that you got to cut them. And the Oakland Raiders have been a perfect example of that. They had to cut Nnamdi Asomugha last year, and it totally changed their team. And so it's why the Chiefs fans have to appreciate that every day this franchise tries to manage the cap, and it looks like they're not spending money when they really are, or they're trying to do it in such a way where it doesn't become some kind of Armageddon 2 years from now and you screw up 2 years because you got to cut good guys. It can still play.
Well, the tight ends improved. Offensive line definitely improved, but still more room for additions on the offensive line. But I guess really the only thing you're upset if you're a Chiefs fan is if you're a fantasy owner of Tony Moeaki next year. Boss is probably going to cut into that reception total just a bit, but it's a great thing for the Chiefs. If Moeaki, who, let's face it, has an injury history, he's missed 17 of 32 possible NFL games, and an injury history dates back to his time at Iowa. When healthy, he's one of the most athletic tight ends in the entire AFC, and I'd even argue the NFL with the matchup problems he can consist of. Him and Boss together in the game give the Chiefs so many more options in the passing game and really what they can do motioning in the run game as well. Let's switch to quarterback position.
The goal to go. We just saw the touchdown against the Chargers in 2010. Goal to go. Red zone, having both Boss and Moeaki not only formation when you're out on the field, but when you get down tight to the goal line, those tight ends, man, are valuable in turning field goals into touchdowns. Just look at the New England Patriots.
You know what? Then let's not talk quarterback. You want to talk goal line offense?
No,
because it's a good transition here, Mitch. You talk goal line offense and how the Chiefs were poor in the red zone last year. Peyton Hillis, the addition of him in the running back core. The Chiefs needed a thunder guy. Essentially, Peyton Hillis is taking Thomas Jones' job. You figure he'd be the bigger back, number 2 in line for carries as the Chiefs roster is constructed at this time. Under Brian Daboll in 2010 with the Browns, Peyton Hillis has his best NFL season. Last year had some injuries, had the Madden curse with him. We'll see if he can bounce back. Signs a 1-year deal with the Chiefs. And right now your backfield looks like Jamaal Charles, Peyton Hillis, Dexter McCluster kind of being that zigzag scat back. And you wonder if there's room for one more addition, whether it's Jackie Battle coming back, whether it's another guy who's kind of a short yardage back, or will the Chiefs add a fullback now that LeRon McClain has gone on to San Diego. Peyton Hillis can play both fullback and tailback, but I'll tell you right now, Brian Daboll, Romeo Crennel, Scott Pioli, they view Hillis more than just a fullback mode that we saw McClain play last year. He's going to get carries in the backfield. He's going to be a bruiser, and hopefully he's going to help out in those short yards and goal-to-go situations as well.
Yeah, and with Mike Tolbert now going to the Carolina Panthers, that takes him off the board because there was some discussion that he could even fit into this mix at some place. But here's the thing with Peyton Hillis. Loved him when he blew up with the Cleveland Browns, and that Daboll knows him, and so does Romeo. They know what they're getting with him, and the injury situation, notwithstanding, to see if he's come back fully. But you don't have to count on him on being the guy. You're not sitting there going, yeah, you got to get 1,300 yards out of Peyton Hillis. The other thing that's exciting about him is he can catch the ball. Let's go back to the red zone, goal to go. I'll harp on it all day long. Now you're in short yardage, even out on the field, and all of a sudden you throw a fire pass, which the fullback on a fake can go out into the flat and you can throw it to him and he can catch it and actually do some things with it. To me, as much as anything, to bring that to the table for Matt Castle and the Chiefs offense, I think is a huge weapon because he has shown the propensity not only to make these runs, but he's got hands and he can catch it in space and make something happen after he catches it.
Yeah, you mentioned his hands under Brian Daboll in 2010 with the Browns, 61 receptions out of the backfield for 477 yards. It's about 8 yards per reception, and it's a lot of the swing passes that he's good at. And what he does a good job of is just mauling defenders over. You get him in space, he's probably not going to make a ton of moves on the outside, but he's going to run over a cornerback and get you an extra 3 or 4 yards.
And you're occupying safeties and linebackers when you do that. So they're not sitting there necessarily chipping your wide receivers. If you've got a tight end like Moyaki that can release down the field, we just talked about Kevin Boss. Now you put Hillis in there. Now all of a sudden you create some real problems for safeties and linebackers who have to respect a deep threat, and then you get one-on-one coverage with your wide receivers on the outside.
The thing I like most about Hillis when I pull up his career stats here, Mitch, when he's gotten the chance to be the man, to be the feature back, and by that I define that as 20 carries or more per game. He's done that 10 times in his NFL career, and of those 10 times that he's carried it 20 or more times, 7 of them have been 100-yard games. He had another. You can add one of them was 99 yards and one of them was 94 yards. So really, 9 of his 10 times receiving 20 or more carries, he's gone for 94 or more yards. What happened to Kansas City last year when Jamaal Charles went down? You had running back by committee, and Jackie Battle flashed at times, and really he had a fine season for a guy that preseason you thought had been 4th, maybe even 5th, depending on how you viewed LeRon McClain and who was going to get the most carries. It ends up being your rushing leader for the Chiefs last season. But now the Chiefs have a guy who has proven he can handle that role, to where if Jamaal does go down with another injury, or maybe that knee isn't healing exactly the way he wants it, they have an option for a guy who can carry the rushing load, be a feature back, because Peyton Hillis is one of those guys, kind of like in the Larry Johnson mold when LJ was at his height. He'll just maul you, and he'll keep it up, and when the fourth quarter comes, he's breaking 10, 15, 20-yard runs and still plowing over guys, and linebackers and safeties, they don't want any part of filling up on Peyton Hillis. Of course, you have Dexter McCluster returning as well, and you figure Hillis's addition makes the Chiefs, that gives them more flexibility with Dexter McCluster as well. Is he going to be a flanker? Is he going to play a little more slot? Is he going to stay in that third down role? How are the Chiefs going to use him? There's more versatility there, and McCluster doesn't have to be locked in to playing running back, which is basically what happened all of last season.
And again, you can declare to the defense, based on what you do formation-wise, you can put them in situations where you want them and put together a package for your subgroups, and you've got all kinds of choices. You know, when the Chiefs signed Peyton Hillis, I put out on Twitter that I like the pick, then I put hashtag Allstott. And somebody came in and says, well, he's got better hands than Allstott. And I would agree, although Mike Allstott was one of my favorite players of all time in the National Football League. But I think what's overlooked about Peyton Hillis is his athletic ability. You can throw him a swing pass or a fire pass. He's got the ability not only catch it, but he can make a 5-yard gain into a 10-yard gain. That is gigantic, I think, for this team. So let's don't overlook his athletic ability, and hopefully he's fully healthy and can attack the 2012 season like he did a couple years ago with Cleveland. And he's Arkansas Razorback, so you bring that kind of edge with you again, like with Winston. I love those kind of guys.
The first person to talk to Peyton Hillis immediately after he signed his contract was our very own Brad Young. Let's check out Brad Young and his welcome to Kansas City, Peyton Hillis.
Chiefs fans, we're with the newest member of your Kansas City Chiefs, running back Peyton Hillis. Peyton, welcome to Kansas City.
Thanks for having me.
You know, free agency has been crazy over the past few days in the entire league. Now, when your decision came down to choose Kansas City, what were some of the factors that went into it?
You know, it was mostly like about what your role would be on the team. You know, it's great to be reunited with Coach Daboll, and I had him in Cleveland. And the coaching staff here is unbelievable. They're real genuine people, you know, come in and tell you really how it is, and I really respect that out of organization.
Now, speaking of coaches, what was your impression when you came in, you talked to the front office and the coaching staff? What kind of impressions did you get from them during your visit?
You know, just like I said, you know, real genuine. You know, they come in, you know, treat you like a player. You know, you bring you in and you start to learn more about them, where they came from, and you learn that, you know, you're a lot like they are. You know, it's really exciting, you know, to meet Coach Cornell and hear his thoughts, and General Manager Scott Pioli, and of course Ryan Daboll. You know, I know the staff, you know, I know the playbook coming in, and it's good to be a Chief.
What kind of feedback have you been getting? I know late yesterday afternoon, Kansas City just went crazy when they started hearing leaks of the news that you were coming here. What kind of feedback have you been receiving from current Chiefs, former Chiefs, future players, and fans?
You know, I kind of stay out of that, but I hear from my family, you know, people tweeting about it or saying good things about it, which is good. And, you know, my family's, you know, really excited. You know, my hometown is just a few hours from here, have a lot of family up, a lot of my family's Chiefs fans, so it kind of all worked out.
You know, you've been in the AFC, you spent 2 years with the Broncos, you've played in Arrowhead as a Bronco. What is it going to be like for you, and how excited are you to run out on that field with the Arrowhead on the side of your helmet with all those fans behind you?
Well, you know, when I was with Denver, this is by far one of the best environments you play in. You know, with all the tailgating and the fans going crazy, you know, they're always backing their players and their team 100%, no matter, you know, how the year's going. And, you know, you need fans like that. And, you know, I'm very excited because I know what kind of intimidation factor it was coming and playing this place, but now being on the side of the intimidation factor is going to be really nice.
Peyton Hillis in Kansas City, and what does it leave the Chiefs for needs at the running back position? As I said, Mitch, I think there's still a need. However, it doesn't have to come through free agency. It'll be interesting to see which route the Chiefs take. Peyton Hillis on a one-year deal. The Chiefs have had a history of trying to draft players to replace others. You wonder if that's going to lead to a mid-round choice or even an earlier choice on a running back this April. Yeah,
you'd think to replace a LeRon McClain type guy, but we've also seen the NFL where you don't necessarily have to do that. Because let's go back to Maneri. Maneri sometimes can be your big guy and be your Mr. Versatile Rubik's Cube guy. Put him back there with Peyton Hillis as a tailback in short yardage situations. So don't think you have to go get necessarily a fullback, but you can try to find an athletic guy who can be that kind of fullback, tailback guy perhaps of the future, and you can look at a draft in that. And we've seen guys drafted like that for years, a Tolbert out of Coastal Carolina who becomes a heck of a player.
And the real question is, how is Brian Daboll, the Chiefs' new offensive coordinator, planning to use the fullback position? The Chiefs do have a draft choice that's a fullback. We can't forget about Shane Bannon, although a lot of fans may have forgotten about him because he didn't make the team out of training camp, went on the practice squad, and then in the first month or so of the season went on practice squad injured reserve. So to me, Mitch, to you, we don't know a lot about Shane Bannon, what he can do. It's going to be a very big and important spring for him and his chances to make the 2012 Kansas City Chiefs. But I think even more important for Bannon and for that position is, how is Daboll going to use the fullback spot? If it's a traditional fullback, that bodes well for Shane Bannon. Get up there, power eye. But if it's kind of that flex guy, the guy who moves around, I don't know if that fits Bannon's skill set that well. And that's what Daboll used when he was in Miami, and even dating back to when he was in Cleveland. Peyton Hillis began his career in Cleveland right after he was done in Denver and he got traded to Cleveland as a fullback, more injuries happened. Jerome Harrison, I believe it was James Davis at the time, in the preseason, where Dable said, "Yep, you're back to the tailback role," and that's kind of where he spawned. That was a 2010 season where he got a folk hero following against the nation. Well, really, he's the national, nationwide vote of NFL fans vote him as the cover athlete for Madden football. He's from a losing team in the Cleveland Browns, so it really was folk hero status. So really, what is Brian Dable going to do at that position, I think, is the big question heading into the rest of free agency and also the NFL draft.
But again, my point is you don't necessarily have to have a classic fullback in that spot, because you do have some guys that have the versatility to go short yardage, where Hillis, and it's a testimony of his athletic ability, can be the fullback or the tailback.
And Jackie Battle, if he ends up re-signing with the Chiefs, he's lined up at fullback before in his Chiefs career. I think the Chiefs would love to have him back. He's testing the waters of free agency. As I said last week, he's earned that right to do that after leading the team in rushing yards, to see if there's any opportunities to get more carries. I think if he comes back to Kansas City, he knows his role. It'll probably be what it was going in to last season, a core 4 special teams guy.
I was going to say, don't forget special teams.
A short yardage running back, which I think he excels as a short yardage back. The Chiefs, using him as more of a every carry back, I think depleted his value in his specialty of just coming in fresh leg and mauling over guys when it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. He wasn't as fresh to do those things. If Battle does come back to the Chiefs, I think there's definitely room for him still on this roster. The connection to Peyton Hillis at the Chiefs quarterback position, it's a small world in the NFL. Brady Quinn, drafted by Romeo Crennel in Cleveland in 2007. The Browns move up to what looked like a steal at the time to select Quinn 22nd overall. Carl Peterson was prepared to select Quinn that year if the Browns didn't trade up ahead of Kansas City. Instead, the Chiefs ended up getting Dwayne Bowe that year. Quinn starts 3 games for Crennel in Crennel's final season in 2008, then starts 9 games for the Browns for Brian Dable, who's now the Chiefs' offensive coordinator, before he's traded to Denver in the 2010 offseason for Peyton Hillis and 2 draft picks. So, Peyton Hillis, Brady Quinn, back on the same team here. Everywhere that Brady Quinn's had in his NFL career, in the big parts, whether it's drafted, trade, it all has this weird Chiefs connection, this Chiefs vibe, and he turned down more money from the Denver Broncos, who wanted to re-sign him regardless of what was going to happen with Tebow and Manning, which we'll get into here in just a minute, Mitch. They wanted Quinn to be their backup quarterback for whomever their starter was. They offered him more money than the Chiefs, and Quinn said, "Thank you, but no thank you. I want to go back to Kansas City. I want to sign with the Chiefs, be their backup to Matt Castle, see what I can do." And I think that this happened before Peyton Manning. So I think for Brady Quinn, in his career and where he's at, he hasn't started a game since 2009. If he is going to succeed as an NFL quarterback, and I don't know if he will. Mitch, he's 3-9 as a starter. His rating 68 point something, but he hasn't really gotten a complete chance to do so. If he can excel, Kansas City would be the place for him because of the people around him.
Well, I haven't touched a bobblehead yet, which is a tradition on Chiefs Talk Live with me. So I'm going Montana here. Joe Montana. The reason? Notre Dame quarterback. There's a Notre Dame quarterback back in Kansas City with Brady Quinn. Let's just, first of all, do you get A.J. Hawk with him? Because he's what? Married to A.J. Hawk's sister, right? So you get, I'm trying to think, maybe it's a package deal.
Maybe a package deal, A.J. Hawk.
It says a lot, though, about the respect Romeo Crennel has around the National Football League. Remember when we went back to Cleveland and they just flocked to him? I just think that last year in 2010, I think this says a lot about Romeo Crennel leading this football team, to have him, that Quinn wants to come back here and be the guy, be the backup, and challenge for the #1 role, because he wants to be with this guy. And I'm excited to see what Romeo can do in that chair, being the head coach of this football team. But let's just say Brady's going to be the backup quarterback for Matt. The definition of a backup quarterback in the National Football League is they must be able to win a game for you, maybe 2. If you just look at it statistically, over half the league usually has to have their backup quarterback start a game. It's usually about half the time where the starting quarterback of a team goes all 16 games. But more often than not, they don't.
Matt Castle's yet to go all 16 games with the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's just there as fact. I mean, that's there. So you have to have a guy in the role that can come in and win a game. Tyler Palko wins the Hail Mary, throw it to McCluster game against Chicago. But we also saw in the other 3 games it wasn't going to happen. Brady Quinn, to me, can come in and win a game for the Kansas City Chiefs if he's the backup quarterback. That's what excites me about him in that role. Don't forget Ricky Stanzi. Ricky Stanzi hasn't had an off season. He gets an off season. He gets a training camp. I get tweeted all the time about Stanzi, Hawkeye fans and stuff. And I said, he's still here. Let him rip. But the fact that you now have, I think you bolster the quarterback position by having a guy of this caliber come in. And again, all four of these free agents, the guys the Chiefs have signed, all kind of fit the mold of what they want in this building. Well, all are high character, high class dudes that have had roles in this league where they've performed well, but they've also been key locker room guys. And I think this guy fits right in.
Well, there's been 4 signings since the free agency period began a week ago, and you'd say the Chiefs roster is better with those 4 signings. The Chiefs aren't done yet. There's still places to go, which we'll touch on as well, Mitch. But you look at the 4 signings, Eric Winston, upgrade at right tackle. He's your starter. He's the bell cow of this free agency class. Brady Quinn, greater than Tyler Palko. There's an improvement there. Now you say, well, Kyle Orton was the backup. You could argue that as well. Kyle Orton gets a 5-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys. The Chiefs wanted to re-sign Kyle Orton. There was kind of a strange chemistry between Orton and Castle last year, almost to where they became such good friends, and Orton's like, this is Matt's team. I don't want to mess with that. And so he goes to back up Tony Romo. I think something that I read the Cowboys committed something like $5.9 million guaranteed to Orton. He got a very good contract as he was kind of the 1A starter, if you will, one of those best guys on the market. We said,
but I became a fan of him, Josh, last year, the way he handled the situation. He still respected Matt, respected this team. I like Kyle Orton. Now, again, let's go back to managing the cap. There's a decision you have to make if you're Scott Pioli and Romeo Crennel. And what do you pay? The backup position we know is highly, highly, highly important. But how much do you pay for that position? And again, this all stuff that adds up. And again, you don't want to be in a position where you pay too much for a backup. I'm happy for Kyle. I wish him the best. I'm glad he's in the NFC, quite honestly, because I think he's going to win games. But I think Quinn comes in and gives you Orton-ish kind of ability at the backup position.
I completely agree. And you look at Peyton Hillis over Thomas Jones, that's an upgrade as well. Brady Quinn over Tyler Palko was not extended a free agency tender, and now he is a free agent, free to sign with whomever he is. And you figure if the Chiefs wanted Palko back, they would have given him the exclusive rights tender. So Brady Quinn, you think of his time. Well, he's been a backup to Kyle Orton. However, there were times last year, and even in training camp, where everyone said Brady Quinn, at least reports out Denver, is the best quarterback in camp. He never got an opportunity there for whatever reason. He did not appear in a regular season game for the Broncos since he was traded there. And I think he went there originally thinking he was going to be the starting quarterback, and Kyle Orton was kind of dangling in the wind in 2010. He maintained the starting role and until Tebow came in towards the end, and then he was dangled again in 2011, and he maintains the starting role till Tebow comes in. And all along, the people that are watching the Broncos and reporting are saying, wait a minute, Brady Quinn is looking like the best player in practice and in camp. So here in Kansas City as Chiefs fans, who knows if it's going to work out with Brady Quinn, but the Chiefs found an experienced backup for Matt Castle. It doesn't necessarily mean, I don't think, that the Chiefs are done adding to that position, because Brady Quinn isn't just going to try and push Matt Castle. He's competing with Ricky Stanzi as well, because this team, despite what I think the common perception is out there that Ricky Stanzi didn't take a snap last year, it means the Chiefs don't have any confidence in him. That is not the case. Ricky Stanzi is going to have a chance to beat out Brady Quinn for the number 2 job in Kansas City. And Scott Pioli has already said he wants to get into the habit of drafting a quarterback every single year. It's kind of the Ron Wolf model of drafting players. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another quarterback coming in April that's going to try and knock out one of those 3 guys that's on the team right now. So I don't necessarily think the Quinn signing means the Chiefs are done addressing the quarterback position, but I do like it. And as I said, if Quinn is going to succeed as an NFL quarterback, which he hasn't to date, this is his best opportunity to do so here in Kansas City with people that are familiar with him. He's going to get a fair shake. He's got a good cast around him of receivers and running backs, very good young talent skill position. This is a good spot for Brady Quinn.
And I'm going to give kudos to Quinn for handling that. That thing in Denver had to be tough. I mean, every day. And that thing's under a microscope every day to see how everybody's handling it. It was tough, I think, on Kyle, tough on Tebow, tough on Quinn. And I thought he handled it very well. You know, the quote came out at the beginning of the offseason, which really was an unfair quote. And Brady came back out later and said, oh, wait a minute, here's what I said in total. Don't take it out of context. But I thought he showed that he was a good soldier in handling that. But I agree with you. Are you going to be stunned if there's 4 quarterbacks in St. Joe at training camp? No. There's going to be somebody else, I think, enter this mix. But let's don't forget Stanzi. But let's also give kudos to Matt Castle here. It's almost every day that I defend Matt Castle, and I'll defend him tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And we saw some highlights of Matt. I just think it's a way better situation now for Matt in the fact that the way this thing is structured now with the offense and the way with Romeo Crennel being the head coach. Matt's made plays. He's made plays as a Chief. He's taken this team down the field when they needed a 7 late game and went 80 yards and made it happen. And I just look for Matt to be even better. He's going to work hard this year, and I look for him to come into camp in the offseason ready to go and play, be on fire too. But let's don't forget this guy was 27-7 TD to INT ratio, because sometimes I think the fans are thinking about that, and his toughness and way this locker room follows him as well.
And also don't count out the fact that the Chiefs will likely receive compensation for the loss of Kyle Orton and Brandon Carr. The way the NFL system works is a very complicated formula, but you get compensatory picks based off of the guys who you lose through unrestricted free agency and what you pick up through unrestricted free agency. Well, right now, unrestricted free agent, let's see, Winston, not an unrestricted free agent, released. Route, not an unrestricted free agent, released.
Excellent.
Boss, not an unrestricted free agent, released.
Point.
Peyton Hillis, there's one unrestricted free agent, and so is Brady Quinn, who is an unrestricted free agent. Well, right now you have Hillis and Quinn going up against McClain, Carr, Orton, and I don't think I'm forgetting anybody else, but there will be someone else who the Chiefs lost through unrestricted free agency. The Chiefs will get compensated one way or another. I don't know how the formula will work, but last year the Chiefs, after losing Wade Smith, I believe it was, they got the 6th-round pick they used on Jarrell Poe at 199. So the Chiefs are likely going to get an extra pick in this year's draft for losing Carr and for losing Kyle Orton.
Great point, because it's a subtle point that ends up being not so subtle if you can make hay with those compensatory picks. They're kind of lost on those last couple of days of the draft, but you can find a heck of a player with those, so it's an excellent point. Get the release guy, don't get the unrestricted free agent.
And we've yet to have our exclusive interview with Brady Quinn, but that's coming up actually this afternoon. He's in town hunting for houses. He's going to stop by. We're going to talk with him. So look on KZChiefs.com.
Is A.J. Hawk helping him trying to find a house?
he just might be. So you'll hear from Brady Quinn. We did hear from him on the conference call yesterday about him confirming reports. He accepted less money in Kansas City than to go to the Denver Broncos for more money. Brady Quinn, welcome to Kansas City. So that really rounds up the free agents, Mitch, which we now look. Where is room that this team can grow? Let's stay on the offensive side of the football before we turn to defense, because really the defense is, I think, going to be the key for this next wave. But Jerricho Cotchery is in town today on a free agent visit. The wide receiver ranks, you think, okay, well, the Chiefs are in good shape there. There's not a huge need. Well, there is a need for somebody either that's an experienced veteran or a draft pick, because you've got Bo, you've got Bruston, and you've got and Jonathan Baldwin. But after the big 3 there, who is there? Well, you got Terrence Copper, who's more of a special teams guy. Jeremy Urban's an unrestricted free agent. Jeremy Horn's going to compete. But there's some definite space for someone to come in and take over a number 4 role, and really a guy who can play out the slot, because a lot of people label, and we've talked about this, Mitch, Breston as a slot receiver. He played outside really the entire season last year. In Arizona, he played outside a lot. They used Bolden in that slot a number of times. In fact, the Chiefs were using Jonathan Baldwin in the slot more than they were using Breston last season. So I think a guy who can play inside a little bit and be a 4th receiver, especially if a guy, and be a capable number 3 if one of those, the big 3, get injured. I think there's still a need for wide receiver on this team.
No question, and we've seen the league, well, you really need to go 4 wide receivers deep, or 5, with Copper being your 4-core special teams guy. Now that next guy also probably is going to have to play some teams, depending on who's up and who's down with your inactives on that particular day. But we also see, if we want Brian Daboll to have all kinds of options, talking about tight ends, he also wants the options to go 4 wide if that's to his advantage. And we see teams, the 4 wides become more and more prevalent in the NFL, getting teams into the dime package. Because guess what you can do when they go to dime package? Run the rock. You can run it now with a Jamal Charles or a Dexter McCluster when you get them spread out and you've got DBs on the field, or you can play pass and throw to the 4th wide receiver. So an explosive 4th wide receiver is very, very important to this team as they want to have a multiplicity of things they can do and all kinds of weapons as they approach the season. But on the offensive side, I think it goes back to what we said in the first half hour. Swing tackle is important. You got to have that. A swing guy in the middle, guard, center, guard. Have 7 offensive linemen on your 53, 54, whatever, and then pick up a 4th wide receiver, 1 more running back who can be a power back guy, perhaps. But now all of a sudden, you kind of got something going on where you can do all kinds of different things. Power when you need to power, finesse when you need to finesse.
Now we've covered the offensive side of the football. Let's talk defense. We don't have to talk new additions because really the only addition to the defensive side of the football has been the re-signing of Amon Gordon. Big Gordon fan here, Mitch. I think he did a lot of things. He's a versatile lineman. You want to talk a guy who can play different positions. He did a lot. Right now he's your starting nose tackle. That's probably not the role he will excel in or the role the Chiefs will go into next year. I'd be shocked if Amon Gordon is your starting nose tackle. He's a 20, 25 play max type of guy, which, let's be honest, with Romeo Crennel's sub-package, sometimes your starter, like Kelly Gregg, a lot of times would only get 20 snaps a game, but there are other games where he'd play 61 snaps, like when the Chiefs were playing against Tebow and had their base out almost the entire game. The number one need for the Chiefs now, without question, is finding a nose tackle. And as we've said the whole time, it's impossible to mock draft Dontari Poe to the Chiefs until you see what the Chiefs do in free agency. Now, there's a few of the top nose tackles are off the board now through free agency with their re-signings with Pua to the Jets, and the name escapes me, back to the Dolphins, and I'd mispronounce it anyway. So really, Antonio Garay is probably the top unrestricted guy available right now. He played in San Diego last year. So the Chiefs will either address nose tackle through another free agent addition, or they will draft it this upcoming April. I don't necessarily think, though, even if the Chiefs don't add another veteran nose tackle, that it means they'll go first round. I think the nose tackle class this year is somewhat deep. There's guys like Alameda Ta'amu from Washington, the kid from BYU is another Samoan guy. I'm not even going to attempt to pronunciate his name. They are going to go in the 2nd, possibly even 3rd rounds of this year's draft. Where do the Chiefs view Jarrell Poe and his development going in to next season? But nose tackle, no matter which way you cut it, is probably the biggest position of need heading into this next month.
The wish list here is finding the next Vince Wilfork or Haloti Ngata. Okay, you find that guy, and you're putting together one of the best defenses in the National Football League and one of the top 3 in the AFC. Stanford route, key addition. But I would say nose tackle. The Mike Backer position, you're sitting there with 3 first-round pick-looking guys at those other 3 linebacker spots. Now, Brandon Seiler's back, Javon Belcher, buddy that you don't have to necessarily take off the field. What's great to have is like a Derek Johnson where you go to your sub-package and you don't have to take that guy off the field. But the Mike Backer sometimes is a role you do that. But I'm going to throw another one out there, and it's the nickel dime defensive back. Javier Arenas is, he is what he is. Last year he was the nickel back. There's times that Jav will have some issues in guarding a taller wide receiver running crossing patterns. Where Arenas is awesome, one of the best in the National Football League, is when he blitzes and he goes. So the wish list here was Carr gets, stays, signs the deal. Now all of a sudden you got Route as maybe a nickel or Carr, you can mess around with that. But I think if you find a veteran who's your nickel, or make Javier be your nickel, or Javier can be the dime, depending on what Romeo wants to do. It's just like Dable having all kinds of weapons on the offensive side. You give Romeo another weapon at the defensive back position. I don't know if Terrence Newman has anything left, but it's a guy like that.
Right.
Someone like that who can be a savvy nickel guy depending on what the personnel. The offense in the NFL always declares Trump, but then you can counter Trump if you've got the personnel to meet their personnel package. And I love Javier and the way he plays. There's probably not a tougher guy in his football team, but you need another defensive back. It's just like the 4th wide receiver. This is a league where you need to have 4 corners, for sure.
Yeah, 4 corners, and I think you also need 3 safeties. A position of need, I think that's high up there, and I had it up there even before free agency started, Mitch, is the safety position. It's the most underrated positions of need, I think, for the Chiefs, because Chiefs fans see Eric Berry, they see Kendrick Lewis, and they say, well, there you go, you're set it free and strong. Well, last year, let's take a look at what happened. John McGraw started 9 games, Donald Washington 3, Savvy Piscatelli 1, and Richard Langford 2. The only guys of that 4 that are under contract is Donald Washington, who started 3 games. Eric Berry coming off left knee surgery, ACL out for the year in the season opener, as we know. You don't know how that's going to come back. His recovery and rehabs look good so far. He'll probably take it easy this coming spring. Kendrick Lewis had his labrum scoped out. He's going to take it easy this spring as well. So you've got 2 beat-up safeties, your 2 starters, and really no veteran behind him. Kyle McCarthy, who hasn't played much at the position, is one of your backups, and Donald Washington is your other. There is a need to add a safety, and it can come through the draft. It can come through free agency, whether it's a Jim Leonard from the New York Jets or a player such as him. I think a guy like that can come in and start for you that's a veteran would be a key pickup, almost in the John McGraw mold, but younger than McGraw. A guy who kind of, when McGraw came to Kansas City in 2007, a player kind of back then, maybe 5 years ago. I think there's a need there for Kansas City, and you don't know what they're going to shuffle. You may see Jaleel Brown go and play some safety or someone like that, but there's a need there behind your big 2 in Berry and Lewis.
Yeah, Jaleel Brown to me becomes an intriguing part of this conversation because he does kind of fit that hybrid role. He can be a big corner or give you a third corner / safety, again, depending on the formation that the offense puts on the field. You forgot the West Point Flash, Caleb Campbell, somewhere is in there.
No, I got him playing linebacker.
Yeah, I
know. Play him on the weak side middle linebacker.
But the safety position, at least a third safety, probably a fourth, where, again, you want to have a guy that has the versatility to play both the run and the pass, and you can put together some different packages. But this is a very important offseason to me for Jaleel Brown. But I could also see, as you mentioned, like a Jim Leonard, one more free agent signing at the safety position. And then you're putting together a heck of a defense that has depth and some insurance against injury.
Yeah, I think the second wave of free agency will address the defense. The Chiefs have yet to sign a defender, if you don't count Stanford Routt back in February, which I guess you should count it because he's going to be your starter opposite Brandon Flowers. But through that first wave of unrestricted free agency, I see the Chiefs making here in the second wave that goes over the next few weeks up until the draft more additions on the defensive side of the football. We've covered basically every position on the end spots. Big offseason for Allen Bailey. Is he going to step up and fill that role? A lot of fans wonder what happened to Wallace Gilberry. I love Wallace Gilberry. I'm a big Gilberry fan. I think he carries a great fan base, but his production did decline last season. He only had 3 tackles. He was playing 15 snaps a game maybe. Does he come back? I don't know. Do they try and find somebody else in that Gilberry mode? There is Brandon Bear. Can he step up and be that guy? There's a minor need there at defensive end. Outside linebacker, not much need at all. I had a lot of fan inquiry on Cameron Wembley when he was cut. Great player. Where do you put him? He's an outside backer / rush D end is what he's going to play in Tennessee. He's going to command a lot of money. Are you going to start him over Houston? You're going to start him over Tamba Hali? I don't think so, just because he had the Romeo Crennel connection. I never thought that was a real viable option with the Chiefs based off of who they have at those outside spots. I guess you could argue who backs up your primary spot. You've got a lot of names there. Studebaker, you have Gabe Miller, you got Cameron Sheffield. There's not a huge need at outside. Inside, you could argue, Mitch, that there is a bigger need because Demario Williams was released, picked up by San Diego. Okay, who's your primary backup to each spot? Right now, Derek Johnson last year, Derek Johnson would have had to move to the strong side had Jovan Belcher gotten injured because Demario Williams can only play on the weak side. And that would have been crippling, I think, to the defense to make Derek Johnson your thumper backer. Now you have Brandon Seiler coming back, but he did rupture his Achilles last year. You don't know how that recovery is going to go. So who is going to be your primary backup to either the thumper, who's Belcher, or if Seiler's healthy, maybe he can push Belcher for the starting job, / also Derek Johnson. Corey Greenwood, he's kind of has his spot inked out as maybe your 5th linebacker in there, and he's going to be your special teams, probably one of your best special teamers on the team. There's a need there, whether it's draft or free agency, to find another body in that inside linebacking core, I believe.
Well, in special teams enters the discussion on everybody we've mentioned because you're filling in that backup guy has got to be a team's contributor. That third safety, let's say you go after Jim Leonard. Well, Jim Leonard's going to have to play some teams if that's the case. If he's going to be the next John McGraw, has been awesome. I mean, he's been the center of the special teams and basically been the special teams captain, along with Terrence Copper. So the backer position, you know, whether that's Belch making a play here or Brandon Seiler recovers, but I still think, yeah, they look at that position. And yes, I'm going to apologize. I put down Cameron Wembley was Wichita Heights on Twitter, and that opened up a gazillion people going, no, it's Northwest. He is Wichita Northwest. I love Cameron Wembley as a player. I think it's the kind of guy. Now, again, you got to be careful in managing the cap. There can be a place for him as a sub guy because he's a relentless rusher. Now, we saw Eric Winston in the first half of the show. One of the best clips we saw was him blocking Cameron Wembley, who was coming off the edge for the Oakland Raiders. But Wembley's got a skill set where Romeo Crennel, if he's here, we'll figure out a way to use him but have him play. But I'm with you up front. Again, you want to have the versatility if you're Romeo Crennel to sub-package. Wallace Gilberry, to me, you know, is not going to be a grinder. He's still undersized in being on that front three, but he is very good at rushing the passer. So you just want to have a lot of options if you're Romeo Crennel to be aggressive and having guys that can do a multiplicity of things at every position, including those front three on defense.
I like Wembley as well, but you mentioned the cap mention. The Chiefs would have gone after him. He signs this morning a 5-year, $35 million deal. You talk cap.
Yeah.
How are you going to fit that in as a sub-package guy? I just never really saw the fit other than the obvious, the Wichita, the previous playing for Crennel, and the fact that he's a good player. But with who the Chiefs had there with Holly and Houston.
And he's a 4-3 guy.
Right, he's a 4-3 guy,
yeah.
and he's going to play a rush D end for the.
I like his game though.
For the Tennessee
and
Titans.
He's going to Tennessee. Okay.
Well, we're about a month away from the first mock draft coming out here on KCChiefs.com. We'll talk about that. A lot of people have been asking for my picks. I'm going to say with it, I'm still a big David DeCastro fan, but I don't think you can make with full authority a mock draft without knowing who the Chiefs have gotten throughout free agency. And free agency is not done, Mitch. There's still going to be some additions coming, and it's going to be exciting to see exactly what comes out.
Can I just say I'm one of the least fans of mock drafts, probably. It just seems like a waste of time.
Exactly.
Now, study the draft, look at each position, but to mock it and to do 30 mock drafts before the draft, to me, there's...
But everybody loves it. They always want the picks.
I know. There's some other things we can do with our time. But you can study each position and look at it, but to sit there and mock it and then change it tomorrow and the next day is a little strange.
I've gotten one pick in the last 2 years, right.
Well,
it was Justin Houston, although I had him in the first round last year, and he went to the Chiefs in the third.
Well, he was great in the first round, so you weren't far off. But yeah, I mean, let's just see what the rest of free agency does here. To me, that's more intriguing because, again, it's much like the second or third days of the draft, your value picks come into play here. And where you can really make your team where you pay them what they ought to pay, but they become really good players for you, much like the second and third late round picks of the draft. It's kind of that second wave of free agency once Black Friday's gone and your credit card's limit's gone. So.
No doubt. Mitch, great to have you back on for the full hour. It's been a while since we've had you, not even on the show, but for the full hour of Chiefs football. And it's a great week to come on. No breathing for you. You actually called, your last game Sunday? And we're on the plane yesterday, and you're back in doing a full hour of Chiefs Live on Tuesday. Holthus never stops. Hopefully, you're going to take the wife for a vacation if up soon because you deserve it.
I better, dude.
You've been going nonstop since July, and that didn't even count. People don't realize if the Chiefs go to the playoffs, you kind of have like a double schedule going on. I remember in 2010 with the Ravens, you called a OU Texas A&M basketball game on Saturday, and then the Chiefs versus Ravens on Sunday.
On Saturday night, driving back. And was ready to go, man. 5-hour energy is a very good invention, I should say. But yeah, actually I double ope now too because I'll still do some games before the season ends. But I would like nothing better than have some conflicts with some victories during the playoffs next year.
People don't realize how hard this guy works. I'm glad we're able to get him here. For Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. That's all for this week. Come up next week, we'll have a whole new bit of news to talk about because there's more signings on the way. Stay tuned to KCChiefs.com.